Slide number one, flying saucers, also called UFOs, unidentified flying objects. The Tic Tacs seen by the U.S. Navy battle groups in 2004 and 2015 and probably many other incidents which they're keeping classified. The official word now is UAV, unidentified aerial vehicle. We understand the basic physics, how it works. Physics explains them all. Well, it's all really the same thing. Let's go to slide number 2. About a year ago, we had a meeting on this same topic in Cortona, Tuscany. It's called Back from the Future, Workshop on the Physics of Low Energy Warp Drive and Conscious Artificial Intelligence as revealed by U.S. Navy Tic Tac disclosures. U.S. Navy close encounters with a low energy warp drive spaceship. It's also a time machine, because once you have warp drive, you can travel in time. We can go back from the future. We can go to the distant star systems, exoplanets. We'll be able to get to exoplanets. We can take a lot of the Earth's population and move them onto virgin Earths. That'll solve the population problem. It'll solve the climate problem. It's going to solve everything. And in any case, in this slide number 3, there's a quote from a French pilot. I know he's a commercial pilot, and his was it his uncle or his grandfather? His grandfather was a general in the French Air Force and actually encountered Tic Tac this many years ago. I think maybe in the 1960s. Same as what the Navy's seeing now, and that's his testimony from his grandfather, general in the French Air Force. Okay, the 5 observables. I think this may be Eric Davis. It's from the one good thing Eric Davis may have done To the Stars Academy. The 5 observables. Number 1, sudden and instantaneous apparent acceleration, because we're going to see that really with warp drive, it's not a real acceleration. It's like a mirage. It's an optical illusion because of the warping of space and time. So it's a sudden and instantaneous acceleration. Hypersonic velocities without signatures. That means there's no heating of the atmosphere, there's no noise, you don't see any jet engines, the disruption of the environment. That doesn't happen. Low observability, transmedium travel. Well, that's something where Hal Puthoff mainly is saying that there's some evidence that the Tic Tacs can not only go through the water, but they can cut through mountain solid stone. And you can do that in principle with warp drive. Let's leave number 5. Let's go on to slide number 5. Okay, this is from, I guess this is from the Pentagon, AATIP, from the Pentagon. And let me just go over it. The science exists for an enemy of the United States to manipulate both physical and cognitive environments in order to penetrate U.S. facilities, influence decision makers, and compromise national security. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I should now say, if you look at the book How the Hippies Saved Physics by MIT professor David Kaiser, you'll see I mentioned the book almost over 600 times, and you'll see that the Central Intelligence Agency asked me and a bunch of other crazy physicists at the time, including Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, to try to figure out consciousness and also figure out how the flying saucers work. So we've been working on this problem basically 50 years, and it's only recently with the revelation by the Pentagon of the reality of the Tic Tacs with the U.S. Navy close encounters that we now know pretty much for sure, in principle, how these things work. It's elementary physics, not difficult. A good graduate student at Caltech or MIT could easily figure this thing out. If we gave them a PhD qualifying exam, gave them a few pieces of information, asked them how would you explain this, it's not difficult. Just on your own, just look at these slides more carefully, and everything in those slides we can understand now and can explain. Let's go on to slide number 5. U.S. Space Force. Already in the 1980s, when Kim and I were working with the Reagan people on these helping to formulate Strategic Defense Initiative, we called for the creation of a new branch of the military called the U.S. Space Force. And by coincidence, by synchronicity, by serendipity, President Trump has now created the U.S. Space Force. And my point here is that without this, we need this technology. We need, I call it tic-tac tech, low energy warp drive. We need that for the United States Space Force. Otherwise, if we meet a hostile power, maybe not a human power, maybe from another galaxy or from another time that wants to invade us, which is very possible. It's a big universe. We may have hostile intelligence out there, and unless we have this tic-tac-tech, we'll be defeated very easily. Let's go on to, okay, a few explanations, and I hope that the people organizing this meeting will have this slideshow on their website so you can look at it more carefully. So I'm just going to say very quickly that Einstein's theory of relativity basically explains all the UFO propulsion phenomena. It's pretty easy to understand. I'm not going to try to teach you Einstein's special theory of relativity and his general theory of relativity in the next few sound bites. So do your homework. Look especially at slide number 7 of the show. Similarly, slide number 8 is Einstein's explanation of gravity as the bending curvature of space-time. And the point that I'm trying to make is we now understand how to do this with very tiny amounts of energy. All right, let's go on to slide number 9. Oh, the energy problem. Again, this is what I was talking about just a moment ago. Generally, it's very hard to bend space-time. So you have to use a trick in order to bend space-time, to bend it to our will, so to speak, to do what we want it to do. Some of you may have seen, you all know Star Trek, right? Is it Star Trek? Yeah, Star Trek with the Q. Is Q in Star Trek? Yeah, Q. The Q. We're talking about we're talking about Q, the Q continuum, and you can even do it with the mind. So now, if you look at Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, he says that the ETs and the flying saucers, that they're able to fly the ship mentally with their minds. And since we now understand the simple physics of how consciousness emerges in non-equilibrium matter, since we understand that, and consciousness is part of an energy field, and since you only need small amounts of energy to bend space-time, a character like Q, or the Time Lords, Doctor Who, in fact, you might say Sarfati is the first Time Lord, the first Doctor Who, for real. All right. So there's the energy problem. And look at this slide number 9 on your own time, because these things require some study. Metamaterials. Metamaterials is the trick. Now, what metamaterials are, they are like artificial atoms at a very tiny scales, atoms that we make with nanotechnology and arranged in a kind of lattice type structure, and that allows us to actually bend space-time with small amounts of energy. Let's go on to. All right, this is more details on the physics, how this actually works. I cannot do this in a short discussion, so just look at your slideshow. And how much energy do we need to fly a Tic-Tac? Maybe a single AAA Energizer Bunny battery may do it. In principle, we can do it with thought. In principle, we can do it with thought, psychokinetically, like Uri Geller bends metal. Uri Geller says if he bends metal, we can actually do that. It's not that difficult to understand anymore. We understand the physics. Okay. I mean, I understand the physics. Keith Wands, a few of us understand the physics. People in the Pentagon may not understand the physics. People at To the Stars Academy, they don't really understand the physics, but we understand it. And one of the important things are that even though when you see a Tic-Tac going at, say, 19,000 miles an hour, apparently, and then doing a sudden U-turn, they think there are hundreds of Gs, hundreds of G-forces, or maybe thousands of Gs. In fact, there's 0 G inside. Inside the Tic-Tac, any machine in warp drive, you're absolutely weightless. It's just like you're freely floating on the space station, which is orbiting around the Earth in free orbital motion. Okay? And then, this is a big prediction. This is the Sarfati prediction. Really easy to detect if an object is in warp drive or not, because it has the reverse Doppler shift. Now, the ordinary, Doppler shift, if you see an object coming, say a locomotive, the typical thing in elementary physics course. You have a locomotive, it's blowing its whistle, wee, 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 it's blowing the whistle. If the locomotive is coming toward you, the pitch of the whistle seems higher. And then when the train is receding, going away from you, the pitch of the whistle, the frequency goes down. With a tic-tac in warp drive, or any vehicle in warp drive, it's just the opposite because of the gravity warping. Turns out, if the tic-tac is coming toward you, what you're going to see is a red shift. It's the opposite. And if the tic-tac is going away from you, you're going to see a blue shift. So for example, Skinwalker Ranch. We have this new History Channel. And the Skinwalker Ranch, Brandon Fugel bought it from Bob Bigelow, and it's on History Channel. And they claim to see an object like a portal, like a star. It's like a Stargate portal, and it's hovering about 1,000 feet above them. And they find that there are deleterious effects. That one of the guys had his brain started to swell, or things with his scalp, and that's easily understood because in order for an object to hover with anti-gravity, with warp drive anti-gravity, there has to be a blue shift underneath at the base of the thing. There's a blue shift because that's creating the anti-gravity, creating the lift. So the blue shift means that even ordinary light particles get higher energy, and if they strike us, that it's like ionizing radiation. So that all fits. Everything's easily understood intuitively. Okay, so the reverse Doppler shift is a prediction of that I came up with just by using elementary mainstream Einsteinian physics. And there's a geologist named Bruce Cornett who claims he's measured this shift coming from flying saucers with sound waves, because whether it's light waves, gravity waves, sound waves, it all show this effect. So the warp drive reverse Doppler shift is very, very important, and it's easy enough to make instruments to detect this. Now, if I don't know if the Naval Air Force actually had an instrument that could detect that in those actual close encounters, but if they do, I claim this is what they'll see. So that's a proper falsifiable prediction. Okay, and then the last slide, almost the last slide, metamaterial heat dissipation coherent phase control. There's a way that I show you have to look at this slide. This is slide 17, next to the last slide. It shows how within each meta-atom in the metamaterial, by changing the phase of the applied electromagnetic field, the electromagnetic field that you apply with a battery, let's say, is like the gasoline, like the jet fuel, right? But if you apply it in such a way that you can either get an attractive gravity field or an anti-repulsive gravity field at different parts of the fuselage of the Tic Tac. And that's what you want, and that's what we're actually seeing. And the last slide is an illustration by Julien Geffray, who's a French physicist who I'm working with. And it shows, it's just a mock-up of a what's called, Einstein called Gedanken experiment, thought experiment. It's just what's called an equivalent circuit of how to make a meta-atom. In the picture, we're doing it with simple condensers and stuff like that, but you have to imagine it shrunk down to the nanoscale, billionth of a meter level. And those are the basic units, the basic, almost like in a nuclear reactor, you have these fuel rods. It's like the basic fuel rod of the warp drive metamaterial fuselage. And that's basically it. That's it in a nutshell.